Humans. First Admiral Zextera's voice cut through the stunned silence. Run the analysis again. This must be an error. Science Director Vyleth's manipulator appendages danced across her console. I verified it 3 times, Admiral. The biological signatures are unmistakable. Human DNA markers. And there's something else. She transferred her findings to the central display. The council members collectively drew back at what they saw. The ships are broadcasting identification codes, Vyleth continued. They're naming themselves. The largest vessel. It calls itself Defiance. Intelligence Chief Krellmore pushed forward, his chromatic skin flickering between warning patterns of amber and gray. Admiral, our deep space listening posts have detected communications between the vessels. They're using a language structure that appears to be derived from human English, but encoded in ways our systems can't decrypt. How is this possible? Demanded Representative Fulmach of the Vespid Collective, wings vibrating in agitation. The last observation report from Earth showed them struggling with rudimentary ion propulsion. Their most advanced military technologies were chemical projectile weapons and primitive fission devices. Elder T'Pran's ancient eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display. 8 centuries of diplomatic experience had taught him to recognize deception. When was our last direct observation of their homeworld? Krellmore accessed his data terminal. Standard procedure is monthly surveillance sweeps, but he paused, mandibles clicking in what the council recognized as a sign of distress. This can't be right. Speak, Intelligence Chief, ordered Zextera. According to central records, we've been receiving regular observation reports, but the raw data packets... Krellmore's voice faltered. The actual surveillance feeds have been looped. The same data, slightly modified, transmitted repeatedly. For years. The council chamber erupted into chaos as the implications became clear. Zextera slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times, restoring order. How long? How long have we been receiving falsified data? Krellmore's skin had settled into a sickly gray. I can't determine that without a full system audit. The timestamp protocols appear genuine. The authorization codes are valid. Which means, prompted Vyleth. Which means, T'Pran interjected, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, that someone with highest level access to our systems has been deliberately feeding us manufactured information about human development. The question is whether it was done from within or without. A junior communications officer burst into the chamber, protocol forgotten in her urgency. Admiral, the human vessels are changing formation. On the tactical display, the massive human fleet was indeed shifting. Not into attack positions as many feared, but into a complex geometric pattern that stretched across 17 sectors simultaneously. It's a message, whispered Vyleth, her scientific mind recognizing the mathematical significance. They're arranging themselves into a 3-dimensional representation of the Alliance Charter. T'Pran finished for her. Article 1. Section 1. The paragraph that defines which species qualify for full membership status. The enormity of the situation settled over the council, like a physical weight. This was no random encounter, no mishap of first contact. This was a deliberately orchestrated revelation. Humanity announcing itself to the galactic community with a display of force that couldn't be ignored and a symbolic arrangement that couldn't be misinterpreted. They had been watching, learning, planning, and now they had arrived. Krellmore's secure access chamber 20 levels beneath the council hall had become a tomb for secrets. The intelligence chief's assistant, Varric, worked feverishly at a secondary terminal, sweat beading on his chitinous exoskeleton. Someone's actively corrupting the archives as we search, Varric reported, 6-fingered hands moving across the interface with practiced efficiency. It's as if they anticipated our investigation. Krellmore studied the fragmentary data they'd managed to recover. Look at these energy readings from Sol system, dated 7 decades ago. The humans were supposedly testing primitive chemical rockets, but these power signatures. Antimatter containment. Varric suggested, mandibles clicking in disbelief. Precisely. Krellmore expanded the display. Hidden beneath radiation bursts our observers attributed to weapons testing. They weren't developing nuclear missiles. They were masking antimatter experiments. A priority alert flashed across their screens. Alliance military installations across 3 sectors had gone dark simultaneously. Defense platforms, early warning systems, automated response networks, all offline without warning or explanation. We need to evacuate this facility, Krellmore decided, initiating emergency protocols. Download whatever data remains to a physically isolated storage unit. The terminal chimed, indicating an incoming transmission on a supposedly secure channel. Both Alliance officials froze as a human face appeared on the screen, a female with dark skin and graying hair, wearing what appeared to be a formal uniform. Intelligence Chief Krellmore, she said, pronouncing his name with perfect inflection. I'm Admiral Jackson of the United Earth Defense Force. I believe we should talk. Krellmore's chromatophores flickered involuntarily. How did you access this channel? The same way we've accessed all your channels for the past century, she replied matter-of-factly. Your first observation team's equipment malfunction near Jupiter wasn't an accident. We recovered fragments of your technology and reverse-engineered it. Impossible, Krellmore countered. That technology was beyond your species' capacity to understand. Admiral Jackson smiled, a gesture Krellmore recognized from xenobiological studies as indicating amusement or satisfaction. Your species' classification system has a fundamental flaw, Intelligence Chief. It assumes technological development follows a predictable linear path. Humanity doesn't work that way. The terminal speakers emitted a soft chime, indicating data transfer. A series of images appeared, historical photographs from Earth spanning 2 centuries, but not the sanitized observation images in Alliance records. These showed hidden facilities beneath Antarctic ice, massive underground complexes in desert regions, orbital construction platforms camouflaged against Earth's moon. While your observers watched our public space programs and political squabbles, we built this, Jackson continued, united in secret while maintaining the illusion of division. Your psychological analysts believed our territorial disputes were genuine. They were elaborately staged performances for your benefit. Krellmore's analytical mind raced, reassessing decades of intelligence reports. The Cold War, the nuclear standoff, political theater carefully maintained to convince your observers that we remained primitive and fractured. Every launch failure, every international conflict, calculated to present the image of a species far from ready for galactic society. Varric had been tracing the transmission source and now looked up in alarm. Sir, she's broadcasting from inside the Nexus Prime defense perimeter. A new image appeared on screen, a human vessel in orbit around the Alliance capital world, its design unlike anything in the human fleet, sleek, predatory, and completely invisible to Alliance detection systems until this moment. We've had observers of our own, Admiral Jackson said quietly, for generations. As if to punctuate her statement, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Alliance defense systems across the capital were shutting down in sequential cascades. The game of shadows was over. The hunters had become the hunted. Admiral Jackson pocketed her grandfather's worn silver dollar as the holographic display updated with new tactical information. The coin had been carried by 5 generations of her family through Earth's conflicts, from Normandy to the covert operations against Alliance observation posts, a reminder of what humanity fought for. All 17 infiltration teams have secured their objectives, Commander Karim reported, his voice tinged with subtle pride. Alliance military communication has been fragmented into regional subsets. They can no longer coordinate a unified response. Jackson studied the real-time feeds from human agents embedded throughout Alliance space. David Chen's team had secured the Skithra defense grid without firing a shot. Ayanna Okafor's unit had control of an Alliance research facility containing technology suppressed from developing worlds. Carlos Mendez had quietly locked down the primary FTL communication relay in the Cygnus sector. Decades of preparation unfolding in hours. "What about the Trojan horse units?" Jackson asked, referring to the human agents in deep cover who had spent decades, in some cases their entire lives, building identities within Alliance society. 78% have signaled mission success, replied Lieutenant Commander Padel from the intelligence station. "We've lost contact with 16 agents on outlying worlds. Contingency protocols are in effect." Jackson nodded grimly. Those agents had always known they might be sacrificed if discovered prematurely. Each had volunteered despite the risk, understanding their role in humanity's grand strategy. "The Alliance Council is requesting direct communication," Karim said. "They've agreed to your terms for the meeting." "Any word from Director Harris?" Jackson asked. "His diplomatic team has docked at the Council station. Alliance security scanned them 7 times before allowing entry." Jackson permitted herself a small smile. "They still think we might be hiding something. Aren't we, Admiral?" asked Lieutenant Novak, the youngest officer on the bridge. "The greatest deception, Lieutenant," Jackson replied, "is that there is no deception left. Everything we are now showing them is real. That's what makes it so terrifying to them." On her private command screen, Jackson reviewed the psych profiles of key Alliance leaders prepared by Earth's Synapsychology Division. Elder T. Pran would likely advocate caution and diplomacy. Science Director Vilef's curiosity would eventually overcome her fear. First Admiral Zex Terra, however, represented the greatest threat, a military leader who would perceive humanity's rise as an existential challenge to Alliance dominance. Jackson activated her neural link to the fleet's artificial intelligence network, accessing a private command channel invisible to Alliance detection systems. "Status report on Operation Phoenix," she subvocalized. The AI responded instantly in her mind. Liberation protocols delivered to 31 of 34 observed worlds. Indigenous resistance cells activated on 27 worlds. Alliance suppression systems neutralized on 23 worlds. It was the most ambitious component of humanity's plan, not merely securing their own place in galactic society, but fundamentally transforming it by empowering all subjugated species simultaneously. "Admiral," Karim interrupted her thoughts, "we've detected unusual energy signatures from Alliance military headquarters. Our analysts believe they're attempting to restore their central command systems." Jackson nodded. "Right on schedule. Zex Terra is reacting exactly as predicted." She turned to her communications officer. "Prepare my shuttle. It's time I met the Alliance Council in person." As Jackson left the bridge, she stopped beside Lieutenant Novak. "Remember your history, Lieutenant. The Alliance has maintained power for 12,000 years through technological superiority and cultural manipulation. We're about to dismantle that system in a day." She patted the silver dollar in her pocket, a talisman from humanity's warring past that had helped guide them to a more enlightened future. "And if we succeed," she added quietly, "we'll have prevented countless wars across 1,000 worlds." Dr. Jonathan Harris watched the Alliance representatives' expressions as they processed the holographic evidence before them. His training in xenolinguistics had prepared him to read micro-expressions across 17 species, and what he saw confirmed their strategy was working. Shock giving way to fear, then calculation of options, followed by the dawning realization that they had none. "These records," Science Director Vilef said, gesturing at documentation of Alliance interference in developing worlds. "How did you access them?" "They're secured by quantum encryption that requires biological authentication from a founding species member." Harris finished for her. He glanced at his aide, Dr. Emiko Tanaka, who tapped a sequence on her datapad. A hologram appeared, showing a human medical procedure. The Alliance representatives recoiled as they recognized the operation's purpose. Genetic modification using Meruk's DNA sequences, Harris explained calmly. Performed on volunteer agents who infiltrated your highest security installations. Crude by your standards, painful for the recipients, but effective enough to fool your biometric scanners. Elder T'Pran's ancient eyes widened. You subjected your own people to cross-species genetic manipulation. The physiological rejection alone would kill approximately 60% of recipients, Harris acknowledged. They understood the risks. The Alliance delegation fell silent, confronting the implications. Humans had willingly undergone lethal procedures, with nearly two-thirds dying, simply to access Alliance data. First Admiral Zextera's scales darkened with anger. You speak of liberation while documenting espionage, infiltration, and biological warfare against the Alliance. These are acts of survival. Harris cut in sharply. We monitored your internal debates about Earth after your first observation teams identified our nuclear capabilities. The non-intervention directive was invoked by a margin of 1 vote. The alternative recommendation was quarantine and monitoring until our civilization self-destructed. Harris activated another holographic display, footage from a classified Alliance Council session 2 centuries earlier. The timestamp and authentication codes were unmistakable. We cannot risk another Krell situation, said the recording of an Alliance official long since deceased. If humans achieve interstellar capability, their aggressive territorial instincts would destabilize the quadrant. Observation only, until their internal conflicts resolve the problem for us. The current council members shifted uncomfortably as their predecessors' clinical discussion of humanity's expected self-annihilation played out before them. Your own protocols condemned us to extinction, Harris said, his voice level despite the weight of his words. You left us no choice but to act outside your system. Intelligence Chief Krellmore, monitoring from a separate security room, accessed historical archives on his private terminal. The humans' claims were disturbingly accurate. The Alliance had indeed anticipated humanity's self-destruction through nuclear conflict and had chosen to observe rather than intervene. On the Defiance, Commander Karim received an encrypted message from Harris's team. Phase 4 parameters confirmed, sir. Dr. Harris has initiated the historical disclosure sequence. Karim nodded to his communications officer. Signal the Phoenix teams. Tell them it's time to release the Alliance suppression documentation to all observed worlds. Across the galaxy, on 34 worlds under Alliance observation, indigenous populations received data packages revealing centuries of deliberate technological suppression, cultural manipulation, medical experiments, resource extraction disguised as scientific sampling. In the council chamber, Harris continued his methodical dismantling of Alliance moral authority, each revelation precisely timed to coincide with diplomatic and military maneuvers across Alliance space. We don't seek vengeance for these historic decisions, Harris told the increasingly uncomfortable council. We seek reform. The question before you is simple. Will you help us build a more equitable galactic society, or will you force us to proceed without you? Elder T'Pran, oldest and wisest of the council, looked at Harris with new understanding. You never needed our military technology at all, did you? What humanity truly mastered was information warfare. Harris allowed himself a small smile. We learned from the best, Elder. We study your history thoroughly. Elder T'Pran led Admiral Jackson through a hidden passage beneath the council chambers, the ancient corridors illuminated by bioluminescent lichen that had grown there for millennia. Few non-Muruks had ever seen these pathways, a testament to the unprecedented nature of their meeting. Your species has accomplished something no other has managed in 12,000 years of Alliance history, T'Pran said, his translucent skin pulsing with complex emotional patterns. You've forced us to confront our fundamental contradictions. They emerged into a small chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that hummed with energy. Jackson recognized it from intelligence briefings, the archive of precedent, a living record of Alliance history accessible only to elders. You understand why Zextera and his faction cannot accept your terms, T'Pran continued, approaching the crystal. The Alliance was founded on the principle of managed advancement. The founders believed unrestricted technological proliferation had led to the Sundering Wars. Jackson studied the ancient alien's face. Your peoples nearly destroyed each other before establishing the alliance. You encoded that fear into your governance. Yes. T'Pran placed his palm against the crystal, which responded by illuminating from within. But there is something you should know, something absent from the records you accessed. The crystal projected a three-dimensional star map of the galaxy, highlighting 17 systems in one color and 34 in another. The founding 17 were not always the advanced species, T'Pran said quietly. 6,000 years ago, we were the observed, not the observers. Jackson's carefully maintained composure faltered. This contradicted all their intelligence. What happened to the previous administrators? T'Pran's inner eyelids flickered with an emotion Jackson couldn't interpret. They left, or transcended, or destroyed themselves. Our histories disagree, but they bequeathed their technology and this system of governance to my ancestors, who were deemed ready after millennia of observation. He turned to face Jackson directly. We inherited this system. We did not create it, and we have maintained it because we believed it necessary for galactic stability. On the Defiance, Commander Karim monitored unprecedented activity across Alliance communication channels. Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from 53 locations across Alliance space. Some kind of ancient automated systems are activating. His tactical officer looked up from her station in alarm. They match no known Alliance technology profiles. These power signatures they're orders of magnitude beyond anything in our database. Outside the council halls, representatives from the observed worlds had gathered in the plaza, their impromptu assembly growing as transport ships continued to arrive. Despite their physiological differences, they found common ground in shared grievances against Alliance oversight. The Exor representative, her translucent wings shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, addressed the diverse gathering. For 3 centuries, they watched as plague decimated my world. Their archives contained the cure, a simple protein sequence their medical ships could have synthesized in hours. Similar testimonies emerged from each speaker. Development deliberately stalled, technologies withheld, suffering that could have been prevented with the simplest sharing of knowledge. In orbit, the command crew of the HSS Defiance detected new energy signatures emanating from deep within the Alliance capital world. Analysis, Karim demanded. His science officer shook her head in confusion. It doesn't match any known technology, Commander. It's as if the entire planetary core is responding to something. In the hidden chamber, T'Pran guided Jackson to an ancient console embedded in the wall, its design noticeably different from standard Alliance technology. There is a third option beyond conflict or compromise, the Elder said, his voice heavy with the weight of revelation. One even the Council doesn't know exists. The Founders left. Contingencies. Protocols for precisely this scenario. What scenario? Jackson asked, suddenly aware they had ventured beyond the scope of even humanity's extensive intelligence. T'Pran's multiple hearts beat visibly beneath his translucent skin. The return of independent advancement. Species who forced their way to the table rather than waiting to be invited. He placed his hand on the alien console, which illuminated with symbols in no known language. The Founders called it the Ascension Protocol. It has not been activated in 6,000 years. First Admiral Zexterra's command center hummed with tense activity as his loyal officers prepared the strike against human command vessels. Tactical displays showed converging attack vectors, weapon systems primed and ready. The window of opportunity narrows, Admiral, his second-in-command warned. Human infiltration units have compromised 70% of our coordination network. If we delay further, we strike now, Zexterra ordered, his scales flushing with the deep crimson of combat readiness. Execute Operation Severance. Throughout Alliance space, Loyalist military vessels broke formation, powering weapon systems and accelerating toward human positions. The carefully planned operation represented the Alliance military's last hope of regaining control. A simultaneous strike against key human command ships before their FTL communication network could be completely compromised. Aboard the Defiance, Emergency alerts blared as sensors detected the incoming attack force. "Multiple Alliance battle groups on intercept vectors," reported the tactical officer. "They bypassed normal command protocols. This isn't authorized by their council." Commander Karim accessed the ship's defense grid. "Zexterra's making his move earlier than we anticipated. Alert all fleet elements. Activate defense pattern Theta." But as Alliance vessels closed to weapons range, the impossible happened. Their engines cut out simultaneously. Weapon systems powered down. Life support remained operational, but every offensive and propulsion system across the attacking fleet went dark in perfect synchronization. On the Alliance flagship, Zexterra stared in disbelief at status reports. "What's happening? How could they neutralize our entire attack force without firing a shot?" His technology specialist worked frantically at her console. "It's not the humans, Admiral. The shutdown commands came from within our own systems, but with override authorization we've never seen before. The authentication codes are ancient." Deep beneath the council chambers, T'Pran guided Admiral Jackson through a series of hidden corridors that descended far below the planetary surface. The architecture changed as they moved deeper, from the organic curves of Alliance design to something more angular and precise. "What exactly is the Ascension Protocol?" Jackson asked, noticing the subtle shift in their surroundings. T'Pran's expression conveyed both reverence and apprehension. "According to our most ancient records, the founders believed advanced civilizations follow predictable patterns. They created the observation system to guide developing worlds through dangerous technological phases. They entered a vast chamber that appeared to have been carved from a single crystal, its facets reflecting light in hypnotic patterns. At its center stood a structure like an inverted pyramid, hovering unsupported above the floor. But they also created safeguards," T'Pran continued. "The Ascension Protocol activates when a species develops sufficiently to challenge the established order through means other than conquest or destruction." "You're saying this system was designed to be challenged?" Jackson asked incredulously. "I believe it was designed to evolve," T'Pran corrected. "The founders left us stewardship, not ownership. Each time a species forces reconsideration of the fundamental structure, the system itself adapts." The inverted pyramid began to rotate slowly, emitting a soft hum that seemed to resonate at a cellular level. In space, aboard the Defiance, Commander Karim received unprecedented readings from across Alliance territory. "Sir, we're detecting technology activations on all 34 observed worlds simultaneously. Some kind of installations are powering up, installations that weren't in any of our intelligence reports." His communications officer looked up in shock. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Elder T'Pran. He's with Admiral Jackson and requesting an immediate conference with representatives from all worlds, Alliance members and observed species alike." On the capital world below, the gathered representatives from observed worlds witnessed a phenomenon spreading across the metropolis. Ancient structures, long thought to be merely architectural elements of Alliance design, began to glow with internal light. Similar reports flooded in from Alliance worlds across the galaxy. "It was never just about the technology," T'Pran told Jackson as the crystalline chamber hummed with increasing energy. "The observation program, the technological limitations, they were tests. Not to prevent advancement, but to ensure that when species did advance, they would do so with wisdom rather than mere capability." The inverted pyramid projected a galactic map unlike any Jackson had seen before, showing not political boundaries or military assets, but something more fundamental: interconnections between civilizations spanning thousands of years. "Your arrival with overwhelming force, yet choosing negotiation over conquest," T'Pran said, "has triggered something the founders left for precisely such a moment." The ancient technology responded to his gesture, displaying a single phrase in a language so old even T'Pran struggled to translate it. "Renewal," he finally said, or perhaps more accurately, reset. The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from 17 Alliance species sat not on their traditional elevated platforms, but on the main floor alongside delegates from 34 observed worlds. Human diplomatic officers moved among them, facilitating conversations between civilizations that had never before communicated directly. Dr. Harris surveyed the unprecedented scene with cautious optimism. "They're actually talking to each other," he murmured to Admiral Jackson, "not just presenting formal positions, but genuinely exchanging ideas." Jackson nodded, though her attention remained partly focused on her neural link to the Defiance. Zexterra's failed military strike had been contained, but the activation of the ancient founder technology introduced variables beyond their planning. "What's the status of the crystalline structures?" she sub-vocalized to Commander Karim. His response came through her neural implant. "Active on all observed worlds. Energy readings continue to increase, but there's no indication of weapon signatures. Whatever these installations are, they don't appear to be defensive or offensive systems." At the center of the assembly hall, the holographic projection of the inverted pyramid from the underground chamber dominated the space. Elder T'Pran stood beside it, his ancient frame looking suddenly reinvigorated as he addressed the gathered representatives. "For 12,000 years, the Alliance has maintained what we believed was the Founder's vision of galactic stability," he began, his voice carrying unexpected strength. "Today, we discover we understood only part of their design." The pyramid projection shifted, displaying intricate patterns of light that corresponded to evolutionary paths of different civilizations. "The observation system was never meant to be permanent," T'Pran continued. "It was a developmental stage for our entire galactic community. The humans' arrival has triggered the next phase the Founders intended." From the Alliance delegation, Science Director Violet rose, her tentacles gesturing in the formal pattern indicating skepticism. "The Founders left no such instructions in our historical records. How can we verify these claims?" The question rippled through the assembly. Even the humans, for all their preparation, had no answer for this unexpected development. A soft chime emanated from the pyramid projection, and a new figure materialized beside it. A holographic entity of indeterminate species, its form shifting subtly as if comprised of fluid light. "Verification protocol accepted," it stated in a voice that somehow reached each representative in their native language simultaneously. "Founder archive awakening complete." Gasps and murmurs spread through the assembly. For millennia, the Founders had been historical figures, not entities that could be addressed directly. "I am an echo, a record left to guide when the conditions of ascension were met," the holographic figure continued. "The arrival of a species that could penetrate Alliance systems yet choose reform over destruction fulfills the primary condition." The beam turned toward the human delegation. "You have accomplished something remarkable. Not merely technological advancement, but advancement with purpose beyond self-interest." Admiral Jackson stepped forward, every eye in the assembly upon her. "We came seeking justice not just for humanity, but for all species under observation. Our goal was reform, not replacement of one flawed system with another." "Precisely," the Founder Echo replied. "The observation program was designed to identify civilizations that could advance beyond territorial imperatives and power hierarchies. The true test was never technological, it was ethical." The holographic entity gestured, and the pyramid projection expanded to show new connections forming between worlds, energy pathways linking the crystalline structures on different planets into a singular network. "What you are witnessing is the network of equals activating," the entity explained. "A system of knowledge sharing and communication the Founders created but could not implement until civilizations were ready to use it responsibly." From the delegation of the Jai, a crystalline species nearly decimated by disease, a representative approached the projection with trembling movements. "Our scientists report that the ancient structure on our homeworld is healing our plague-ravaged ecosystems. How is this possible?" "The network contains all knowledge accumulated by the Founders and every Alliance civilization since," the holographic entity replied. It is being made available to all connected worlds simultaneously, calibrated to their specific needs and ecological challenges. The implications stunned the assembly into silence. Millennia of technological development, medical knowledge, and scientific advancement, restricted for so long to the Alliance elite, now flowing freely to all worlds connected to the network. In that moment of collective realization, the galaxy truly awakened to a new era of possibility. 3 months after the activation of the network of equals, the great shipyards orbiting Earth bustled with unprecedented activity. What had once been disguised military fabrication facilities now operated in full view, their purpose transformed. Massive vessels that had been designed as warships were being systematically converted, weapon systems replaced with scientific equipment, troop quarters reconfigured into diplomatic spaces and cultural exchange centers. Admiral Jackson stood at the observation deck of Unity Station, watching as the renamed HSS Defiance, now the GSS Concordat, prepared for its maiden voyage as a galactic exploration vessel. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity's greatest deception had been the warships themselves. 700,000 vessels, remarked Elder Tipran, who had become humanity's strongest ally within the former Alliance leadership. An impressive bluff. Jackson smiled faintly. Not entirely a bluff. The ships were real enough, though only about 8% were fully crewed. The rest were automated platforms controlled by our AI network. Impressive information but limited in actual combat capability. A magnificent deception nonetheless, Tipran acknowledged. You gambled everything on a show of force, sufficient to compel negotiation without actually requiring you to engage in conflict. The greatest warship is the one you never have to fire, Jackson quoted from an ancient Earth strategist. Below them on Unity Station's main concourse, the first graduating class of the Galactic Exchange Program prepared for their assignments. Young representatives from 51 worlds had spent the past months learning from each other, different approaches to science, art, governance, and ecology. They would soon depart to share their knowledge across the reformed galactic community. Dr. Harris approached, accompanied by the holographic presence of the founder Echo, which had become a permanent advisor to the new galactic conclave. The final integration reports are complete, Harris informed them. The network has successfully connected all 51 worlds. Knowledge transfer is proceeding at rates beyond our most optimistic projections. The founder Echo's form shifted slightly, its luminescence pulsing in what they had come to recognize as an expression of satisfaction. The crystalline repositories were designed to accumulate and preserve knowledge for precisely this moment. The technological disparity between worlds will equalize within a standard solar cycle. First Admiral Zex Terra, now stripped of his military authority, but retained as a historical advisor, joined their observation of the shipyard activities. His demeanor subdued, but no longer hostile. I still don't understand, he admitted. If the founders intended this outcome, why design a system that appeared to promote inequality and hierarchy? The founder Echo's form rippled thoughtfully before responding. The hierarchical structure was never the goal. It was a testing mechanism. Civilizations that accept unearned privilege rarely question its foundations. Those that challenge such systems despite overwhelming odds demonstrate the capacity for ethical advancement necessary for the network's responsible use. Jackson's neural implant discreetly alerted her to an incoming transmission from Earth's Unified Council. She excused herself to take the communication privately, returning moments later with an expression of quiet amazement. The terraforming protocols shared through the network have just reversed 3 centuries of climate damage on Earth, she informed the others. Atmospheric carbon levels have been neutralized through a process the Krell developed millennia ago, but never shared with lesser worlds. Tipran's translucent skin flushed with the deep blue of contrition. There is much to atone for in how we manage the knowledge entrusted to us. The founder Echo's form brightened. Atonement through action is the highest form of understanding. The Alliance preserved knowledge, but forgot wisdom. Humanity remembered wisdom even while seeking knowledge. On the main viewing screen, They washed as representatives from the former observed worlds toward Earth's cultural capitals. Museum curators from the Tor Crystal Cities examined Renaissance art with new appreciation. Scientists collaborated with human medical researchers on applications of their newly shared knowledge. Diplomats from worlds that had never before communicated directly drafted frameworks for ongoing cooperation. As the GSS Concordat prepared for departure, its mission no longer conquest but exploration, Admiral Jackson finally removed her grandfather's worn silver dollar from her pocket and placed it in a small display case. A relic of our divided past, she explained to her companions, preserved to remind us of what we overcame. The founder Echo studied the ancient coin with something like approval. The true measure of advancement is not forgetting one's origins, but transcending them without denial. Your species understands this principle inherently. As Unity Station rotated to catch Earth's sunrise, the first rays illuminated a galaxy fundamentally transformed, not through force of arms, but through the courage to imagine a different kind of power than conquest. A new dawn, both literal and metaphorical, for 51 worlds and counting.